Next, we're going to remove this top brace by simply sliding it right off. Just lying on there like so. And now we can take our T0.8 Torx driver and we can remove these 4. And when you take those out, you want to kind of keep track of where they went, because they are different sizes. These 2 are the longest, then you have a middle size, and then the shortest one goes up front here. So we'll talk about that on the reassembly. So now, before we go ahead and just break these 2 shells in half, we have to realize that there's a spring in here under tension. So we need to set ourselves up a way to control this as soon as we start cracking it open. The cool thing about the M4 version 2 gearbox is there's usually a hole in the back that the stock screws into, and you can just put a screwdriver in there to kind of lever the spring down while you open the shell up. That doesn't happen with these, so you're going to need just a little screwdriver, or you can even use an Allen key, something like that, with a nice long shank. And I'm going to slowly start to crack this box open, back end first, and then as soon as I can get this piece through the gap in between the shells, I'm going to stick it in and hold it down, and that's going to stop this whole thing from exploding. Another piece that you want to keep your hands on while you start to disassemble this is the cylinder itself, because the spring is pressing against the back and the front, and a lot of times you can get the cylinder kind of lift up as the spring starts to bow. And since this is 440 FPS, it's a pretty powerful spring, so just watch out. I like to put on some safety glasses just because I'm square, but I like my vision, so we'll do that. Sometimes I find if you have a little micro screwdriver, a flathead, you can kind of get in here into some of these seams and kind of help it pop apart. Something like that. They're going to be some are going to be a bit more stubborn than others, but you just want to take your time here and not rush anything. That's the key. Is there any way? Okay, so they're slowly starting to come apart now, just ever so gently. Maybe you need to use a little lever. There we go. Okay, so now that I've got it started, I'm going to slowly, very slowly work my way around here. And what you can do is pull up on this little tab here. That's the button to keep the top cover on. You can use that as leverage. There we go. So I'm through, and I put my piece in. Now when I hold this down, it will stop the spring from shooting out the back end of the gun. So very gently, like so, I'm going to open it up. Now the spring is under tension, so as soon as I get enough clearance, I'm going to very gently lift this up, clear the back of the box, and remove the tension there. And now, since the spring's out, we are free to very casually remove the other half. Okay, so in a nutshell, all I did was we had these 2 ears of the spring guide wedged into these holes like so. And what happens is when we open the box up just a touch, I was able to get my Allen key into this hole, and then all I did was kind of popped it up like so, and then pulled it out with the spring to relieve the tension. That's essentially all you have to do to kind of render the box safe. One thing, just watch out when you're taking this out that you don't catch one of the coils on this back edge here, because the spring could still be in tension and you wouldn't know it, and then you go to take the cylinder out and the whole thing blows up. So that's what you're going for. I have a towel here because you can see the massive amounts of grease that are in here. Actually, I don't know why. Well, then again, it's a Jing gun. I really don't like the broad stroke brands per se, but I've worked on, I don't know, maybe half a dozen JG guns, and all of them have this over-lube kind of Vaseline type stuff. So I don't know, maybe it's just something they do at their factory. One of the things here you'll notice is that the tappet plate's kind of bending a little bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and relieve some of that pressure, just for now. And we'll have to get all the gears set back again in the meantime. So what I'll do is just remove my gears. When you do this, if you don't know how to properly shim a gearbox and put everything back together, I would suggest that if the gun was running fine when you got it, don't mess with the shimming. You know, if something's already shimmed the gun and it works properly, why mess with the good thing? Now that being said, if you test fired it, say at the Crony station, and you notice some grinding or some loud motor noise or something like that, then by all means do a shim job. This one, that will be a different video, let's put it that way. So here's your spring guide, here's your spring. So I will put this away and mark what gun and what FPS I was getting with it, just to keep everything in track. And we're going to replace it with this Matrix M110, which should give us around 370 to 380 depending on the air seal. And one of the things you can see here, you just want to do a visual eyeball here, make sure that they're the same length. That's a big thing. Sometimes I've been misshipped springs before. I've been shipped a sniper rifle spring by accident, and yeah, just give it a quick eyeball, make sure they're the same length, make sure there's no crazy nibs or nubs or anything like that sticking out. We're good. So this is the new one we're going to install. Taken my old spring, I put it back in the bag. I've labeled what the FPS was and what gun it is. If you're ever working on more than one gun, I highly suggest you do this just to keep everything organized. There's nothing worse than pulling everything apart and then going to dig inside a big bulk box of springs. Mainly because the only way to find out exactly how hot they're shooting is to put it in the gun and put it all back together. So if you can avoid any type of unnecessary work, label your parts. So now we have our new spring. There are a few things we're going to do just to kind of prep this up to help everything work properly. I have some, forget that, I don't really care about the brand, but it's aerosol silicone oil. And all I'm going to do is give this a very light, nice, light shot of silicone spray. Just give it a quick wipe down. And also very light, very, very light, just like a little dusting. I don't know if you can see that, and then you can put that all the way around. And you know, when we're in the gearbox, it's always good just to kind of eyeball our gears, make sure all the teeth are good. You know, despite all the gunk by where the spring was on the other side of the gearbox, the rest of these gears look like they're lubed pretty well, actually. I'm not going to have to do too much to this. So we're going to have to go ahead, set this back in here. Okay, now it's time to put everything back together. So, putting these things back together, depending on the gearbox, each one seems to have a personality of its own. It can be pretty easy, or it can be one of the most frustrating things you've ever experienced in your entire life. So, right now, usually what happens is you have this anti-reversal latch right here. And 9 times out of 10, this is what causes you grief, because this is spring-loaded to intersect with the bevel gear here. So if this is fitting loose in the lower side of the frame, what happens is it will want to pop up and disengage this. So you're not only trying to hold the cylinder down, the spring down, but also trying to hold this little nib down. Those are the ones where it can get really complicated. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to take my little Allen key here and put it in to the spring guide, just to get it ready. I'm going to take the top half of my box, which I have cleaned all the crap off of, and we're going to want to make sure that if there are any shims on the top of the box, that we go ahead and put them down onto the actual gears now, so that when we turn the top of the box over to put it together, they don't fall out into the gears and things like that. So we're good here. Box has been cleaned up. So you're going to want to just start by, once again, I like to put my finger on the cylinder. Just make sure that nothing's disengaged here. Okay. So we're going to slowly, very slowly push this spring in and try and seat that tab on the bottom. And now that I do that, I can put the other side of the gearbox in. Now, one thing you don't want to forget at this point is the little top lever. So I'm gonna just kind of use this, put it in here. So now we kind of have everything rough fitted. It's not quite fully seated yet. So what I'll do is I'll go in with a little micro screwdriver and just wiggle these guys around just a touch, like the trigger. There we go. See that? Just making sure that they're right in the center of the holes. Same with the gears. Just make sure that the gears are centering up.